This is my theory. We all emerged at some point from the sea. So for me to return to water is like returning to a parent or the source or whatever you want to call it. But when I get especially into seawater, it's like I am home. I know things are as they should be, and that difficulty or being in what seems to be unnatural circumstances is part of life. It's hard to put into words what it is like when you've gotten to the point that nearly every breath has to be a conscious effort, and it is an extremely painful, difficult, and taxing one. And I got to the point where everything in me was screaming, just do not take the next breath. The infection had started in my respiratory tract and my sinuses. It was a pretty simple sinus infection, no big deal. But it just kept being dismissed by doctors and emergency rooms. Even though my oxats were dropping shockingly, even though x-rays were starting to show broken ribs from the coughing, it just went on, and by that point my respiratory tract became so inflamed that just the movement of air through it was excruciating. It was like being hit with a baseball bat. And I've never been hit with a baseball bat, but it was like being hit with a baseball bat. I was not expected to live at quite a few points. I had accelerated joint damage from direct damage, infection of the bones, infection of the surrounding tissues, as well as it started up autoimmune processes where my body was trying to cope so hard with expelling the invaders that it was actually starting to attack some of the remaining healthy tissue. When my organs actually started to fail was, we can actually pin it to a date, and it was Christmas Day 2018. It was the day that I started having seizures. My oxats dropped so far that there are times Kingsley thought I wasn't actually alive. I have almost no memory of this day, but Kingsley actually took some video in between because he was afraid that I was going to die, and if I was going to die, he needed proof. But that was already the onset of kidney disease, liver failure, and I was starting to go into heart failure. With that extent of damage, a lot of the processes became degenerative. My C-spine had collapsed and become so damaged that they pretty much decided to do an emergency admit to reconstruct my C-spine. They weren't sure I was going to survive the anesthesia. So they tried to get me as stable as possible for as many days as possible that they felt comfortable with. And it was still a 12-hour surgery. We have, when you have kids and they grow up, you make the pencil marks in the kitchen as they get taller. It was really sad because Kingsley would prop me up on the door frame and measure how much shorter I was getting. And I went from being over 165 centimeters to 158 centimeters tall. And at some point, most of us just through age are going to have a collapsed disc or a protruding disc. A lot of my discs are simply not there anymore. They've extruded, they've burst, they are now desiccated. They're gone. So losing my mobility was actually probably not as bad as it might have been for other people, simply because both of us had been around the differently abled community for much of our lives. And those times actually will almost certainly come again. So every organ, every system, every structure. It turns out that finding one's freedom, and this is probably true metaphysically as well as physically, involves doing it completely wrong for an extended period of time. It's how everything great is done. Nobody's born walking. Nobody's born swimming. There are additional gifts and realizations from learning how to swim again, not just in my own life, but in how I transmit that very fundamental movement to others, as well as I am still, now more than ever, consciously working on how I walk, how I run waddle, how I swim in different conditions. That process of learning, instead of being frustrating, has become more like renewal. Alive, included, hopeful, and in a way that extends so far beyond myself. So far. I mean, I'm just one medium to large sized human there at the start line, but when you look around, you see what your being there actually means. And to see my own triathlon experience multiplied into the lives of so many other people, it makes life really mean something. It makes life really worth it. And it makes every day when I don't want to get out of bed, it makes that possible. And because it makes it possible for me, doing so makes it possible for others to do the same. There is something about an Ironman finishing shoot that just makes you realize again that experience is so much more than just your little packet of meat and bones here for however many years it's going to be here, and especially now having the experience of doing Ironman with a team, I am doing more than just the swim. We really are a team. It's as if all three of us are doing all three legs. Like, we're a three-legged stool. You can't take one off and not expect it to topple over. And so to cross that line, not just by myself, but with my teamies, again, that sense of expansiveness, of being part of something so much bigger than just yourself, which is also what I feel like when I get into the sea. I would call it transcendent.